Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to this second and night-ending bonus upload. Before we jump on into it, a couple quick links. As many of you may know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. These audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and I appreciate them. With that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this second and night-ending bonus upload, shall we? All right, everybody. Today I have a guest. He's been on the show a couple of times from North Carolina. Jody, how are you?
I'm pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for coming on. Happy Memorial Day weekend.
And happy Memorial Day to you. And I want to thank all the men and women out there that have gave their life, and they're still fighting for our freedom out there. I want to thank all of them.
Yeah.
And all the ones that have served and still serving, and not, but the veterans. I hope the good Lord bless them.
That's right. I do too. So last time me and you had talked, you had said to me that you were going to start talking to some people out in your neck of the woods, and getting some information. And you emailed me a couple days ago. You've been pretty busy. That you had some kind of encounters that you wanted to share with us that you had heard firsthand from people, but you also had a couple things happen driving in those areas with your daughter as well.
Yes. Yeah. I'll tell you about the ones first that happened to me. Me and my daughter was driving to Georgia, and right in Hiawassee, Georgia. There was it looked like a coyote, but it was way too big to be a coyote. The back end of it was lower than the front end, and it, and kind of looked like it had a small mane on it. But I can't exactly say that's what it was. It higher may have been up, because it was just, it wheeled around, and I slowed down, and both front paws or hands or whatever come up off the ground, and it was standing up. And my daughter, she freaked out, and she started screaming, wanting to go. So I didn't stop. I just took off.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, even though that was just, it scared her to death, but, and I'd like to have stopped and really seen what it was, but it had a snout. It was gray. I'd say it's like what you call coyote gray, and it just didn't have the look of a coyote. It was bigger, but it wasn't as big. I would say it probably, if I could have sat there, it'd probably been 5, maybe 6 foot tall. But it probably a juvenile. But as fast as it was and the way it whipped around on a dime to face my car, it just, it was shocking. And then almost in that same place, I kept looking, and we'd always look. My daughter, she went with me every time I went down there, and that was probably about 4 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
Well, on our way back at a different time, different day, we was coming back, and I noticed this car pulled over, and there was a field above it. There was 2 ladies, one younger and one older, was standing at the fence looking up in the field. And there was 2 men in the trunk of their car, and one looked like he was pulling out a gun. I couldn't tell you what kind it was because it just looked like it had the stock and then the barrel.
Right.
And that was the older man, the white-headed man. And then there was looked like a younger man. It may have been his son, I don't know. But I shot him. I know the younger lady was pointing a camera up in the field up there. And I looked up and I seen something that looked like a silhouette. There was a silhouette just inside some trees that was in the middle of that field. And I said, Taylor, did you see that? And she didn't see it. But I turned around just right down at the bottom of the hill, and it wasn't just a 15, 20 seconds. And as I was coming back up, they had already jumped in their vehicle, and they was speeding away. I mean, they was flying.
Mm-hmm.
And, I said, oh, maybe Taylor, they've seen something. I want to see what this is. Well, we went on up, and, I didn't see nothing when I went by because I went by so fast, but I turned around and I come back and I pulled in right where they was at. They was a can, when I got out, there was a can of bear mace laying on the ground. And I looked up where the woman had her camera and stuff, and in those trees, they was a silhouette at first, and then it kind of leaned out. It was a Dogman. That's the only thing it could have been, because it had a long snout on it. I seen the tail from behind it, shagging back and forth, and it had a hand on each tree beside it, and it was looking dead at me, and the eyes was yellow, and this thing was huge. It was big. I don't know if it did a charge at them or what. I didn't see no shells on the ground, but I didn't really have a time to look at a lot of it because my daughter, she seen it and started screaming, and she was ready to go. She wanted to go, and I didn't want to put her in danger. And if I didn't have her with me, I would have stood there longer, and looked at it and tried to take a picture, but she was ready to go.
Right.
So I had to get her out of there. And because that last thing I'd want was something happen to my daughter. And but what happened there is I'd met a man that, come to find out, he's from over in Nantahala, from a lot, where I told you about a lot of things that went on.
Yeah.
Right. He was from there, and he's kind of distant kin to us. And he told me a couple stories. Now, this man had some 11 game cameras up. He pointed every one of them out in the front of his house. And he said he's got them in the back, but he never said how many. And we didn't go in the back to look. So apparently he's seen something, but he wouldn't tell me exactly what he had seen. But he knows about Bigfoot, and he knows about Dogman. And here where I live, he said that now he bear hunted with these fellers around here that had a lot, high dollar hunting dogs, and he hunted with them. And there's some people down here below us that use chicken, I'll just say it, chicken shit to make feed and stuff back out of it. Excuse my language, but they use it, and they put other chemicals and stuff. They make dog feed and other chicken feed. They make all kinds of feed. And it really stinks as you go through there. Well, they used to have the people that do it now, their dad and granddad, they had a hog farm in there. And they would have litters, and they had this, and when they would have these litters, and when these pigs got up to about 100 pounds, they had noticed that they'd start missing. One would miss, like once a week, it'd come up one missing. And they they got tired of it, because they was this one had 16 piglets to her litter, and when they got up bigger, they really started coming up missing a lot. And so the man, he got down there, and he put up a light that was I was trying to remember what he called it. It's one of them that you can light up. They use at the airports to light up where they can really see. That they had money,
Okay.
and so they could really get what they wanted. And plus they was part of the airport here in Andrews, and the Andrews Murphy Airport, and so they had a big light, and they run the line into their house, and they put the switch in there to cut it on. And he had two big dogs. They was hunting dogs, and supposedly they wasn't afraid of nothing. And they was bear dogs, and he said that they would go after anything. Well, when a pig would come up missing, they would go to raising Cain and trying to get out the door, but he wouldn't never let them out. And he'd go out there the next day, and a pig would be missing.
Mm.
So when he put that light up, he put his shotgun in there next to the door, next to the light switch, and he said that the man planned on when the dogs went to raising Cain and the pigs went squealing, that he was heading out there to see what it was. He was going to find out what this thing was, and if he could, he was going to kill it. Well, he went. He was there one night. So he's fixing to go to bed. All of a sudden, his dog started growling, and then his pigs started screaming. Well, he went in there and he picked up the gun. It was already loaded. He throwed it off for safety, and he hit the light. Straight out the door he went, and the dogs went out with him. And the light, what he saw in with the pigs. Now, he never come out and said the name of what it was. What he would say was, there was a man standing there about 7 to 8 foot tall. He said a big man. He said he was huge, and that he had hair from head to toe. And he wouldn't call it a Bigfoot. He never would say the name. But he said this thing had a 100-pound pig under its arm, and the pig's head looked like it was crushed. And I said, well, how could he see that the pig's head was crushed? He said that the light that they had lit that whole place up. It would light up a football field. Just that one light. That's how bright it was. And he said that this thing had the pig under one arm and put one hand on a fence post, and they had built the fence up to where it was I think it was 6.5 feet. I think that's what he said. And this thing jumped over the fence like it wasn't nothing. He said it just jumped over like, somebody would any fence, that is agile. And when it landed, it started to run, and he throwed up and shot it twice in the back. And it stumbled, but it never let that pig go. Well, he called his buddies that he bear hunted with. Now, they was big. Most of them have passed away now. This was back in the late 70s, early 80s, I think. They've passed away since then, but he said that he called them all up that night, and they met there the next morning. They went over where he said it jumped, and when it come down, where it had come down, there was a 17.5-inch footprint. He said it was looked like a human footprint. He said that's how big it was. And he said you could see the toes and everything. And there was blood there. Normally you don't hear of blood when somebody shoots one of these things.
Right.
But they found blood, and they had their dogs. And these dogs, they didn't want to. They kept having to pull them. And they would go and go and go. Well, they went around these mountains. And up on this mountain where I told you the story of where that girl thought she was a witch, and also where Terry's grandson and them and his friends saw this crawler and this Dogman facing off. They came up on a cave, and these dogs, that was it. They would not go within 50 yards of that cave. They would not. They flipped out on the guys that had them. They would not go.
And they're hunting dogs. These are experienced hunting dogs.
Yeah, tree and walkers and black and tans. These, just that's all they know is to, fight a bear and stuff. And but this cave was, I asked him where it was at, and he kind of gave me a little bit where it's at. And so I thought about trying to go up there and look for it, but it's pretty rough. It's kind of pretty rough in there. But he said that when they got close to that cave, you could smell it. It had an awful smell.
Right.
And they was, let me think here. Let me get this right. They was six of them. And then they had their guns up, ready to shoot. And they had high-powered rifles, not just shotguns. They had high-powered rifles. And they rushed that cave with their lights and stuff because they started out with they had, all of them had flashlights. And when they went in that cave, there wasn't nothing in there. And in one corner of it, there was a bed. It looked like something had brought, when it was this Bigfoot, it brought, like bows and, a lot of pine bows in there. Okay. And laid them down, and that's what he was sleeping on. It was a bed. And there was bones everywhere in there. They said and also there was feces in there. Mm. And, that's, I've heard that before, that they crap where they sleep. But he said that he had, seen that over in the place, and he said the smell was being overpowered. But he said he seen dog skulls. He said he seen deer skulls. And back then, there was not very many deer around here.
Right.
If you seen a deer, you was lucky. And then they started populating later on in the 90s and 2000s, and then there's quite a few deer in here now. But back then, like I said, if you saw a deer, you was lucky. and they was smart too. So he seen it. He said he seen antlers, but he said they was cat skulls, or where I guess it was getting people's cats, and they was. I can remember when people was talking about their dogs coming up missing. A lot of people was accusing somebody of coming in here getting them and taking them to laboratories and letting them, then selling them to them to run tests and stuff.
Okay.
But this too, I don't know, but this thing, it got a lot of. They said there was bones everywhere in there, and said they was small bones, large bones, but there wasn't no human bones in there, and not that they could tell. But the thing, it disappeared. It may have went somewhere and laid down and died, because he said he got some good. He said he hit it 2 good times in the upper back, so he may have hit the lung, and so it coughing up blood, and because they trailed it to there, but that may have been where it come from.
Right.
Eventually the blood ran out, but the dogs kept on. But who knows where it went to? There's so many places you could go in these mountains, and nobody'd ever find you. You could stay hid. I mean, this is where Eric Rudolph was at. You see how long he stayed hid.
Yeah.
And another thing that he said was back in the 1990s, they was deer hunting, and somewhere near Franklin, where this I told you that me and Kelly had run into this. They was hunting on them mountains, and he said that one of his buddies, they was sitting about 200 yards apart, and one of his buddies seen a deer. It was a buttonhead, and he throwed up, and when he shot it, it let out something let out a scream that they'd never heard before in their life, and it scared every one of them. And they was standing. They all hurried and met up, got together, and they said, "Let's go find a deer." Well, they found where the deer had fell at the bottom of a hill, right where he'd shot it. But the deer was gone. And up this bank, there was claw marks, where something had picked that deer up and was going up that bank. And he said you could see where something with claws clawed their way up through there, up that. And he said they was 2 sapling trees that was pretty good size, was ripped out of the ground, where something must have grabbed them and pulled itself up. They may have been more, I don't know, but it took his deer. And he said that he asked one of them, said, "You want to go look for this thing?" And he said, "Well, I don't know. Do you want to go look for it?" And he said, "Not really." And he said, "Well, let's just walk a little ways down here and look." Well, they did, and they happened to see something that was looking at them. And he said it looked like he said it had a snout. He said it looked like a dog. And he said he'd never, the only time he'd ever seen anything like it was on TV. But he said he couldn't really say that anything on TV looked exactly like it, but it looked like had a snout, had pointed ears on top, and he said it would just glared at them. Said the eyes was black. Said they didn't have no color to them. And it just sat there and it growled. It would raise its, you know how a dog would just growl, just raise its lips up.
Yeah.
And it was doing that like it was daring them to come towards it. And they didn't see the deer or nothing nowhere, but this thing was like cutting them off. Maybe they was a den there. I don't know. But when they saw that, they just turned around and took off. And now this was these are kind of older men that ain't used to running. And when they run back, he said that everybody's laughing at them for the way they was running, because they was really getting it out there, because they was scared. And then he just said that he never would call it what it was. He never would say it was a Dogman, because he knew what Bigfoot and Dogman was. But, you know, and this fella was straight up.
Right.
It
was, you know, really quick. It was kind of funny, because when you said that to me, you had said, you know, flat out what the guy said. He said a man would come out of the woods. It was huge and it was hairy. And I said, well, you know, maybe he just didn't want to say the words, because at that point it's real, you know. Yeah, he's seeing it, but when you actually verbalize it or think, you know, at that point, then you're actually, you know, recognizing it as it's right there in front of you, you know, like just kind of a way of not really admitting they exist, even though you're seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, you're all right. But yeah, there's a man gonna, he's gonna talk to me, and he said I could tape him. He's an older man, and he said that he's had 50 years or more of Bigfoot and Dogman around his house almost nightly. And he said that he could tell me some stories. He said he's seen them. Or not seen them, but heard them. He said it's never been during the day, but at night he's heard them fight.
Really?
And he said, and his exact words were, he said it was like two bulldozers slamming into each other. And he said that he knows that he could hear trees falling. And, you know, we was kind of around a lot of people, and he just kept looking, because, you know, he just didn't want to say a lot. You know how people, trolls and stuff are. They want to laugh and make fun. Well, he know, you know, a friend of mine had told him about me, and that I was wanting to talk to people that, you know, that had experiences.
Yeah.
And I'd like to be able to tape them, and I would never mention their names or anything like that. And he said that he's almost 80 years old. He's in his 70s, but he said he would talk to me, and he would tell me, you know, what he's seen. And so I'm looking forward to that. And this man, and he's one of the old timers that, you know, he wouldn't bullshit me.
Right.
And then, but I'll tell you one other thing that happened. My niece and my nephew, this was up at our old home place. We had a field up there. And at the bottom of that field, there was some apple trees. And right next to those apple trees, they had a swing set. That was, you know, it was one made out of wood, you know, out of 4x4s, and you know, they bought it at Lowe's, and it was, you know, it was a bit, you know, a good one, and they was swinging on it. And Chloe said that, that's my niece, she said she just happened to, well, let me say this, they came in the house screaming and crying. They was flipped out. And what they said was she said she seen something out of the corner of her eye. There's a dry slough that run down the edge of the other woods, the big woods. And a dry slough is where when the river overflows, it goes into that slough, and instead of washing out the road, it'll go down that dry slough. And this thing was standing over her. And what she described to me was, it had a tail on it, and it looked kind of like a monkey, but it had big, sharp teeth, is how she said it. And she said this thing was motioning her with a hand to come here, like, come here, motioning for her to come there. And she said, Blake, look at this. Look at this. That's my nephew, Blake, her brother. And he looked over, and he fell off. She said he fell off the swing, and he was running. He rolling down the bank, trying to get away. It scared him so bad. And she started screaming. He started screaming. He was bawling his eyes out, screaming, and they was running to get into the house. And she said this thing jumped up in the trees and started swinging from limb to limb through the trees back up to the mountain. And when they got down there to me, I grabbed my high-powered rifle and I took off up there, but I never could find nothing. But there was a stink in the air like a bear. And, that kind of stunk. You know how a bear smells. And it's just an old rotten smell. Mm-hmm. But I didn't see nothing. I didn't see no limbs moving or anything. But it could have been sitting in a tree watching me. And there again, the trees. If it would have got her, if she would have went over her, it would have got. She said it wasn't that big. She said, and now she was probably 5 foot, maybe a little over at the time. She said it was probably about as tall as her, but it had a long, thin tail on it. And she said the tail moved, it would curl up and everything. But she said it looked like a monkey, but it was, like I said, about as tall as her, but it had sharp teeth on it, like canines. And it had she said, a small snout. And we had a bulldog at the time, and she said that it was kind of like that. But it scared her so bad that they wouldn't go outside without somebody being with them after that. And, I looked it up, and I showed them a couple of pictures, and that one picture I showed her was of what they call a devil monkey. And she said, that's it. That's what it looked like right there. That's it. And that blew my mind, that being so close to us. And we started driving up through there daily to see if we could see it, because I didn't like something like that being that close to the house and take one of my children, one of my kin, one of my little ones.
Absolutely.
Which I thought of them as my youngest too.
Yep.
I loved them all.
And that's a name that you don't hear often. People referring to these creatures as devil monkeys. I don't know if they're different than Dogman or not, but I mean, they resemble. I've read a couple of decent research books on the devil monkey, and to me, they resemble a Dogman. I'd say they'd have to be a Dogman. Just because of the description, very monkey-like, but still canine-looking as well.
Yeah, it could have been a juvenile, but in the picture, it had a skinny tail like a cat, and I said, was a tail like this? She said, yeah. She said it was skinny like a cat's. Huh. And I just thought, wow, and here this thing is here, and that was shocking.
Yeah.
And when there was a man from out of Houston, Texas. He was a billionaire. He bought the land around us, and they wanted to find, some, where some certain springs was surveyed. So the Forest Service came in and took a bunch of it. And on that Forest Service land where the ridge went, and it went straight up to the top of the mountain. And this mountain, it takes a while to get up there, and it's hard. It's a lot of it straight up. In that mountain where the ridge meets the mountain,
Mm-hmm.
it comes into like a 90 degrees, and down that 90 degrees, there's a cave up there, and this cave has it's almost looks like it's been flattened out, and right in the center of it there's a cave, and this guy named Bill that worked for the guy that bought all that, he got up there to it, and when they went in there, there was a bunch of bones and stuff in there. He said it smelled like an old dead animal. He said it smelled like an animal that lived in there, but it smelled like a dead animal. But this thing went way back in there, and you would have to be somebody that was skinny to get way back in there, because a rock came down and you'd have to lay down on your stomach and crawl way back up in there. And water rushed out. There was springs that come out of there. And that kind of blowed my mind, because I roamed them mountains when I was a kid, and I thought, man, well, what if something would have got me? Which I remember stuff being thrown, and just stuff hitting me, sticks and stuff, and they couldn't have come from nowhere, and I was like, where'd they come from, and
Right.
looking up, no squirrels, no nothing around. But then, me being a kid, we just went on.
Yeah,
and
just let it
didn't
slide
know
by.
nothing about it. Yeah. And, that was the same area where I woke up that morning, and that black dog sitting right there. And then when I started pulling my gun out, it took off, and it was gone quick.
Right.
And, and also where we shot at that owl, it was, that's all the same area back in there. But that's basically the few things that I had,
Right. Let me ask you something really quick. The
Sure.
that location in Georgia,
Yep.
is that anywhere near where you had shot that dog man?
No. This is right across the line. It's in Towns County, Georgia, which is called the Towns Hiawassee. And the way you go over, we call it Helen Mountain.
Okay.
Now, I will tell you this, on that mountain, and it's always happened to me and my daughter. Now, me and Terry saw some stuff too, but I'd stopped to take a leak, and I'd stepped up, and I had my lights and stuff still on, and way down in that valley down in there, that people camps and stuff down in there, they was 3 knots. They was perfect knots. And they had to been hard knots too to be able to sound like they did. And I was like, wow, I just, 3 knots, and I was kind of getting excited. And then all of a sudden right above me, something started walking on 2 legs, something big.
Wow.
And then a limb got broke. And I said, it's time for me to go. I'm gone. I jumped in the car and I flew out of there.
Yeah.
And there was another time, me and Terry here recently, there was a gray, I don't want to say it was a Dogman, but this thing was big, but this thing, from the tip of its nose to its butt, had to be 7 foot. That's how long this thing was. And I didn't see no mane or nothing on it, but it was kind of bigger up top and wider at the head, right behind the head like a man's. It was wider there than it was at the back.
Right.
And the tail was bushy and long. And this thing stood and just looked at us like, what do you want? And the eyes did shine yellow off this thing. And I was like, I said, we're going to stop. Well, Terry did. He did. He slowed down and came almost to a stop. And this thing turned around and looked at us again. And then it's like it thought about turning around on us, but then it just went right off the hill. And this is a straight drop off. And it's pretty good ways down there. And I didn't hear a thing, because I had my window down. And I didn't hear a thing of it going down the hill. And like I said, it's a straight drop off. And there's a horseshoe curve down there that people camp down in there. And there's a place that I can go down in there and take a picture. What we do is we go down there and we'll stand around for a little while, and we put stuff out there. There's rock stacks out there.
Mm-hmm.
And we stood out there, and I took some pictures with my phone. And when we got home, we looked at them, and you could see faces, not pareidolia faces.
Right.
Real faces looking at us through the laurel. And you could even see where one had pulled it apart. Was pulling the limbs apart, looking at it.
To look at you to get a better view of you.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was over across the creek. There's a creek that runs down there, and it was a pretty good ways, and I got it as close as I could with my camera, which my camera's a piece of junk anyway. But I'm going to get another camera, and I'm going to take some pictures, and I'm going to send them to you. And I want other people to look at them. I want you to look at them just to see if I'm crazy or not. And because we've done it 2 or 3 times. Right. And each time we go out there and stand for a little while, and we'll make noise, and we'll talk to it. Just say, hey, we're not here to hurt nobody. We don't want you to hurt us, stuff like that. And I know they're there because I heard the knock. And that's when I'll take the pictures after a little while. And like I said, you can see it. You can see them. And you go back the next time, and their faces are in different spots the next time. They're not in the same spots. And I've been trying to get up with this guy too, that about the woman over here, the FBI agent. He had took those pictures of where she was taking pictures of him while he was taking pictures of the Dogman. I'm trying to get up with him to get the pictures again so I can send them to you.
Okay.
So, because it blows my mind. I thought it was horns. I thought it was a goat man at first. And then you could tell it was ears because they was laying down the next time he took a picture. And that was really, really, really wicked. And then over here beside of it, there was another one, a big one. I think the one that had the ears that looked funny was smaller. I think it may have been a juvenile. Yeah. But it was, if I could take you to the spots and show you where these is at, it would blow your mind where these are taken at. And so little of woods, just so just very few. I mean, there's not enough cover there to cover me. And that just, it's shocking.
Yeah. Are there any
And
caves or anything out in that way?
that, where he took at is where they run up on that cave, of the Bigfoot.
Okay.
And yeah, there's other caves in there. They say that, but I've never seen it myself, that on Robbinsville Mountain, you can go up to there sometimes on a certain night, and you can look out and you can see a fire burning, and if you're able to get a certain way and look, you can see 4 Confederate soldiers sitting around a campfire.
Oh, wow.
Like they're talking. And, and that's, a lot of people have seen that. And it really freaks them out. And people have went out in there at night just to see that, and they've seen them.
That's crazy.
And some people's even had the nerve to walk down there, and then there's nothing there.
It's almost like Gettysburg. People claim to see, the Confederate and Union troops in Gettysburg too. That's interesting. Yeah. That's very interesting. Huh.
They say here in the Smokies here, and that there was a lot of running, fighting battles here.
Yeah.
So, they could have been, but they said that, like I said, I've never seen it myself, but I've heard it from a number of people, and the same story is told every time.
Yeah.
There's always 4 of them sitting around the campfire, and they're drinking, looks like they're drinking something, which is probably coffee or something.
Yeah, chicory or something.
Yeah, and just talking amongst themselves. And, and it's always a dark night, not much moon and stuff. And
right.
They see it. And it's, that's just another one of these legends, and there's always these legends and stuff that are told, there's always truth to them, because they have to be a truth to them for them to get started, and so I think that a lot of them, something happens, and just like a name of a creek. How does a creek get its name? Like Bear Creek.
Yeah.
Or Big Bear Creek. Let's say that, Big Bear Creek.
Yeah.
Well, one day somebody saw a big bear near that creek, and that's how everybody started calling it.
Well, it's just
up there where that big bear was seen on that creek. Big Bear Creek.
Just like where Coonbo's from, the Booger Bottom. Why do they call it that? Well, because it's the bottoms, and they seen Bigfoot out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And there's a place called White Oak Creek, and there's a lot of white oaks in there, and there's a branch that breaks off, and they call it Rattlesnake Branch. And the reason why they call it Rattlesnake Branch, because that's where a lot of rattlesnakes are in there.
Right.
And people go in there and hunt rattlesnakes.
Yeah.
And White Oak Creek, it got that name because there's a lot of white oaks in there, and people like to do, go in there and squirrel hunt.
Right.
But there's a lot of bears and stuff in there too, because that's where they come in and eat acorns and everything. But they just always get different names. That's how a name or whatever. The old timers tell, and there's always a lot of truth to it.
Yeah.
And then they may add, like the old timers like to tell a lot of tales. They may add to it, but once you talk to, 4 or 5 different people, you can piece together the truth.
Right. Yeah,
and
that's definitely the truth there. Really quick, we got a lot of new subscribers here. Since you had kind of shared your the incident that I mentioned where I said you had shot a Dogman. Where was that in Georgia again?
Oglethorpe County.
Oglethorpe County. Now,
Yeah, there's a little town down there, I should have told this before, called Washington.
okay.
It's just a little bitty town, and it's off a state road. I can't remember if it's 20 or 22. And we was hunting on a clear-cut deer lease down there. So
Now, if you don't mind, can you kind of give a brief little tidbit of what happened that day? You were hunting on a deer, or you were hunting on a deer lease, and what happened?
Well, that night, it was a night that the Braves won their first National League pennant out of Atlanta. And it was in October, and I was camping out by myself down there. I had everything up. I didn't have I hated sleeping in a tent. And I just had a tarp halfway up and, just part of it. Had a fire built and had the fire going pretty good. Well, once the game was over with, I remember Sid Bream went around third base and slid home, won the game. And so I cut it off and laid there, and I remember looking up at the stars, and I must have dozed off. Well, I always slept with my pistol, which was 357. And earlier that day, there was a guy said that he seen a big black dog chasing some deer. So I kept my 44 Magnum rifle with me too. And so, because you can hear the coyotes, the
yipping and stuff.
Yeah, they do a lot of that.
Yeah.
And you can hear the pups, and so I was just later, and I dozed off, and something woke me up, and I know it was the good Lord that woke me up. But it sounded like just a whisper, like on grass. And back then, the flashlights we used, which was the spotlights, was candlelight power. In today's time, they're looms. Well, I had 1,000,000 candlelight power, pretty big. It was yellow and it was big, and it was fully charged. And I grabbed it, and I grabbed in my left hand. I grabbed my pistol, and when I cut it on and shined it about 3 to 4 feet away from my head. They was what looked like a wolf that had its teeth bared, and when it let out a growl or whatever, first thing I just throwed up a shot. And I know I hit it in the mouth. That was the first place I shot, and I seen blood, and that was the only blood I seen. And I just went, it's a double action pistol, 357 Magnum.
Right.
And I was hitting it. When it flip it over, it'd get right back up. I kept saying, why ain't this thing dying? But what scared me the most was when I shined the light and it hit it in its eyes, it put a hand up to cover its eyes. Not a paw, but a hand. And the hands, and I it kind of looked like a raccoon's hands. You know how the knuckles are knobby. And that's what it looked like. And claws, 2 or 3 inch claws, and it had big teeth. The teeth were big. And when my pistol, clicked empty, I just reached, grabbed my lever action 44 Magnum, and I shoot 300 grain bullets in it, and I shot it 7 times before it ever knocked it back into the weeds, and the weeds were like 6, at least 6 foot tall.
Mm-hmm.
And I told it, I think I seen other eyes in there, and I fired a couple more shots, and then I just all I wanted to do was get out of there. I hurried and loaded my pistol up and back up, and I put more shells back in my rifle, and I just kind of looked for a second, and I had a water cooler, and I poured the water out. I had a table sitting there. I poured the water cooler on my fire, and I had my light, my spotlight shining right there in all that. That was giving me the light. And I had a couple more jugs of water, and I poured all of them on it, and, just to make sure I didn't want to start a fire.
Right.
And so I throwed what little bit that that mattered into my car, and I took off. And when I realized it, I was crying, and I'm not afraid to admit it. I pissed on myself, and I got to a 24-hour store, had extra clothes and stuff with me. I went into the bathroom, and back to you, the bathrooms was outside, and I went in there and cleaned up and everything, and I just kept playing it over my mind. What was that? What was that? I kept thinking it looked like a werewolf. What else could it have been? What would have hands? What else would have hands? And, that looked like a dog. Well, make it long story short, I got home and laid down and couldn't sleep. Everything just, when I did doze off, I woke up, I started having nightmares night after night after night of a monster chasing me through the woods. And when I'd get to the edge of a cliff, it was always the same dream. And right when it'd start to get me, I'd wake up, and the bed was just wet with sweat. And one night I got to the edge, I said, I remember in my dream, I can't take this no more, and I jumped. Right before I woke up. Well, I quit having those dreams. And but the next morning, I was sitting there thinking about it, and I got a call from the people that I leased from, and they said one of them said I needed to get down there right now, and I thought, oh God, I've shot somebody. That was a damn werewolf. I've shot somebody.
Right.
And that's what went through my mind.
You were young when this happened. You weren't older.
I was 20. This was back in 1991. I'm 53 now, so I was 22, I think. And I got that, I met up with a guy, and I kept saying, what's going on? What's going on? He said, we just got to get down. We were told to get down here. I was like, oh my God, what's going on? And, what have I done? When we got down there, and it was 2 feet away from the fire my fire that I had dug a hole. I'd made sure that the roots was pulled up, because, sometimes a fire will run along those roots and it'll start a fire, forest fire. I'd made sure there was no roots, and I had put rocks around it, everything, and there was this dude there. I guess he was a big dude. He was probably about 6'7", 6'8", give or take, and he had a beard, and he had on a green jacket, but it didn't have no Forest Service or nothing on it. But there was a game warden there. They said that there was 8 acres had been burned. There was a bulldozer there. Now, there is no way that they could have got a bulldozer down that road that quick and already cut a line, a fault line, to where the fire would not burn no further down, unless they had already had it in place waiting. And there was a helicopter, had a net under it flying off in a distance. Well, my brass, I didn't pick my brass up at night, and that, he said that guy said, that old boy, he said, what was you shooting at last night? And I said, why? He said, well, look at all your brass right here. He said, you had to shoot at something last night. Well, I didn't, I wasn't about to say, well, it was a werewolf come in on me, and I had to shoot it 13 times. And I just said there was a bunch of coyotes come in on me. He said, son, you stick with that story right there and we'll all be all right. Mm. That's exactly what he said to me. I'll never forget them words. I can close my eyes and still see him saying it, hear him saying it. And I said, are we done? He said, yeah, you didn't start this far, so we ain't worried about it. And that told me they started that far to burn any evidence up.
Yeah.
And then a week later, I hadn't been back down there, but, I knowed I had to get back, or I never would go back in the woods. But back behind my ex-wife's grandmother's house, she owned a bunch of land back there, and there was deer on the property, and there was some bottoms in there. Her 15-year-old nephew wanted to go down in there, and so he had a 30-06, and I hunted with a 6mm.
All right, so we got cut off, but I got Jody back, and you had left off with 6mm.
Okay, yeah, 6mm was my deer rifle. It's what I hunted with.
Okay.
I used, it shot 100-grain bullets, and we was sitting along, there was a creek that ran down through there, and it cut a deep hole in the mud, the ground was, black dirt. And so it had cut a hole, a deep where the creek run down. It was probably, if I jumped off the end of the creek, it was almost eye level, the ground was. And, but we was sitting there watching, there was a trail that run up along that creek. And that's where a lot of the deer come out of the bottoms up to there.
Okay.
Well, as me and Shay was sitting there, there was movement down there. And I said, I just kind of went, Shay, He said, yeah, I see it. And, real low. He said, yeah, I see it. Real low. And here I am talking low like we're doing it. But as we kept watching it, when it kept getting bigger and bigger, and it was a fox. Mm-hmm. And it was one of the biggest foxes I've ever seen. But it wasn't nothing, it was just a big fox.
Right.
And it's a red fox. And it just kept coming towards us. And I know it seen us because I looked through my scope, and this thing had eyes dead on me. It didn't look at Shay. It was looking dead at me, and it never moved its eyes. Mm. And I told her, when it got closer, I told her, rock. And usually if there's a deer, if there's a bobcat or a fox or anything like that, a deer will follow them from behind them. Yeah. For some reason, and we thought they might be a deer, so I threw the rock at it, I threw the stick at it, and it never strayed from looking dead at me and coming straight at me. Well, when it got, I can't remember how close. It was close. And I just put the crosshairs right between its eyes and shot because it was right there at me. When I shot, it disappeared. I mean, there was no hair, there was no blood, nothing. We looked up the trees, we got down in the creek, see if there was a hole in the, in the bank. There was nothing. This thing just disappeared like it was never there.
Yeah, that's so strange.
that's something that I've never, even Shay, you know, my ex-wife says that he talks about that. That he don't know, you know, he's a grown man now, and he still talks about that he does not know where that thing went to. And, you know, they put a road through there and cut all that off now,
Yeah.
where they can't deer hunt. And so, you know, that was something that was really weird. And there's still stuff that goes on down there. Like my ex-wife said that something big went up a tree, and then it had wings, and it flew over top of her house, and her and her husband now heard it flapping, and they happened to see it once it got over the highway and flying, and said it was big. It was wide. The wingspan was wide. It could have been an owl. I don't know, but they said it didn't look like an owl. They said it looked, you know, just weird.
Right.
You know, not normal. And so I just, you know, I don't know what to say to that. I've never seen nothing like it except that owl.
Right. Yeah.
And it was big, but it wasn't like they said. But there's a lot of weird things in these mountains up here that
Yeah.
I can, you know, right now I know where a Bigfoot is, and you know, if you take, I advise people not to do this. You can take bacon out,
Mm-hmm.
and you can take that bacon and cook it over an open fire. And if there's a Bigfoot in that area, it'll come, and it'll come fast. So if somebody ever does that, they better be ready to jump in their vehicle and run. Because I don't know what bacon does to them, but they go crazy over it.
Well, it's bacon. Everybody loves bacon.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, right?
Yeah, no doubt. But it does something to them. I don't know if it's the smell or what of it cooking, but it does. It'll.
My daughter does the same thing when I cook bacon, and you have to run out of the room because she'll knock you down. No, I'm just kidding, but
Yeah.
you know that's crazy. You know, it's I wonder if it's just the you know what's strange is, and ironically enough, I remember experiences and encounters when people tell me new things. Remember Lewis from down your way, the retired sheriff, and he and his ex-wife were having a barbecue, cooking steaks. He's on his back deck.
Yeah.
What comes out of the woods but a Dogman? And, and you know, he doesn't know if it was because of the steaks or not. But yeah, it was, I mean, if something smells good, they're coming.
Yeah, that's true. But, you know, something's weird about the bacon, though. I mean, if you, I don't know what it is. It's like people talk about it. You know, a lot of researchers, they're afraid to do it because they've heard stories of these things coming in and, you know, going crazy.
Yeah.
You know, and so they just bacon does it to them. I don't know why, but it does. But you know, if anybody ever gets out and does it, park your truck where you can get in it and get out, or vehicle, whatever. But I wouldn't do it if I was people. And
No.
I know I won't do it no more, and because they'll come after you, and they're wanting that bacon.
Yeah.
They'll even reach in the fire and get it, and it's just crazy. And there's a lot of other things up here. Just, you know, looking outside right now, and it's almost peaceful out here, but there's not a sound out here right now.
Mm.
And usually there's crickets and everything hollering, and
Yeah. In the spring, early summer, in the Great Smokies, there's always noise.
Yeah, but there's nothing out here. There's not a sound out here right now.
Mm.
And I don't know why, but they are, and we've had some cats, and these cats have come up missing, and they're gone.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I haven't smelled them, so something's took them.
Hmm.
And up on this ridge up here, my mom thought I was out here screaming one night, hollering, Bigfoot, but I don't do that. But she heard a scream up on this mountain up here, and she said she could feel, my mom's 87, 88-year-old, and she said she could feel it vibrating her body from way on that mountain up there.
Wow.
And she said it just, it freaked her out. And then also, I've told this, excuse me, that there was something, and it was tapping on the door down there. And my mom happened to be walking by in the kitchen, and she heard the tapping. She thought somebody was at the door. And when she got to the door, she said, "Who is this?" And nobody would say nothing, but they would just tap. And she hollered at my sister, and my sister run down, and she said, "What is it?" Because Mama was getting freaked out, and she said, "I've asked them who it is, and they're tapping on," and that's when they tapped again. And when my sister was reaching to hit the deadbolt lock, something was turning the doorknob. The doorknob was turning, and she reached up there real quick and hit the deadbolt.
Yeah.
And then it shook it and pushed, and it couldn't get in, and it shook it kind of hard again. And then my brother was coming. I was up here, and if they would call me, I'd have grabbed my gun and I'd have went down there. But my brother was coming up the road, and he happened to miss the driveway, which it's kind of hard to miss. Somebody had knocked our reflector down, and he slowed down, and he went on up and turned around, and they said that 4 steps, and it was off of the porch, and it shook the house with each step. Is how big it was.
Mm.
And when my brother pulled in, he didn't see nothing. There was nothing to be seen. If they would have called me, I'd have went down there. I don't know what would happen, but I would have went down there.
Yeah.
And, so.
Well, brother, we're coming up on
that's
time.
Another thing.
Well, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
That's another thing that, I don't know what it was. It was either a Bigfoot or a Dogman.
Well, it had to have been one of the two. Definitely not a bear, because bears, like you and I were talking earlier, bears don't have opposable thumbs. They're not turning things, grabbing things, doing things. I don't know, maybe it was a Squatch, or a Dogman, but definitely not a bear.
No, it wasn't. I would have, I got me an M16, not a fully automatic, but I've got it loaded up. And I've got my 12 gauge and pistol, and I don't go outside without a gun, and because these mountains can get creepy.
Right.
And, I've got my door open. I've got my gun here. I've got my door open, and you can't hear nothing. I cut my air conditioner off. There's not a sound out there except the cars that go by on the road. and it's just, like I said, it's creepy. And I've got neighbors on each side of it, just like the neighbor had that dog. And I've seen a dog get hit since then, and there was blood everywhere.
Right.
This did not have no blood anywhere except 4 little bitty streams, and something had took a bite out of its shoulder, and it even broke the shoulder bone. You know, the what do you call it? Where the shoulder goes in. You know.
Yeah.
It was even broke, and it was a perfect bite mark. And I don't know, Stu, and that was a big German Shepherd dog. And that night there was a lot of weird stuff happening. You know, we saw stuff, we heard shooting at me, and then looked like a big black dog run, and my niece was here and she saw it, and also you could hear something walking on the gravel of the neighbors, and it sounded like a very heavy human, you know, 2 legs, walking on gravel. And you know, I saw it that night, the dog, and that blew my mind. I took pictures of it, and my phone has, I've got to get into it somehow, try to get somebody to get into it, and I can send you the pictures. But yeah, I know a lot of people will say, yeah, that's convenient, you know, but it's the truth, you know. I didn't really think much about the pictures until, you know, I've seen dogs hit, and they was, I mean, there's blood everywhere. Right. So a car didn't hit this dog, and it's like it was placed exactly on the double yellow lines, like something was wanting somebody to stop and get out.
Like an ambush. Yeah, like an ambush.
Right. Yeah. And when I told my brother about it, because we was going to Georgia that night, he wanted to come back up and look at it. So we come back up. At first, you know, I thought it was looked like a wolf. Mm-hmm. But then I seen it was a German Shepherd, and I told him, and when he seen it, he thought it was a wolf, and I said, no, it's a German Shepherd. So we turned around and went back down, and we stopped on the opposite side of the road, on the wrong side of the road. Right next to him, there's a creek, and I told you about the kudzu. When the kudzu all died out, they was brown, big old round brown spot that something had laid under that kudzu, and I guess where it had peed and all that, it had killed the kudzu on the bottom part of it. And the brown spots was there all year, and it's growed up now, but I want to see, you know, I'm going to stop down there and just see if I see movement over it. But Terry felt that something was, it's just like he got the feeling that something was watching him from that creek. And he rolled his window up real quick, and he said, let's get out of here. He said, I think there's something right here in this creek, next to this, right off this bank in this creek. So we took off. And when we come back, the dog was gone, you know, later on that day. The owner, he had went to work, so it was gone when he went to work that morning. And I talked to the people at the state, and they didn't get it. And so whatever dropped it there, got it back. And like I said, the neighbor over here, he was wondering what happened to his dog, and I told him what happened to it.
Right.
And so, and he's got another dog over there. It's got a German Shepherd that's got floppy ears. And I almost shot that dog one night because it had the purple eyes, and that's something else about that down in Oglethorpe County. That thing had the eyes on it was almost purple. It was so weird looking. I can't explain the look, the eye, but it just, the color of it just was real. I don't know if you say bright or dark purple. I don't know how you explain it, but it's just hard to explain. But I seen that same look in this German Shepherd's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had my pistol out there, and I throwed up on it. And I was, I was, if I'd have had a higher trigger on it, I'd have killed it. But I'm glad I stopped myself when I figured out what it was, but
right.
I seen that it was the neighbor's other German Shepherd, and I just told her, and it was a female. I said, girl, I'm glad I stopped myself. I just talked to him, but
right.
that just brought back bad memories. And
absolutely. Listen, we're up on the time here. I want to thank you for taking some time out of your night to share with us what's going on. If you do happen to go up, when you do go up there, if he's excuse me, if he's agreed to let you record him, maybe he would agree to having like a sit down, maybe put your phone on speaker, and him and I could talk.
I was thinking, that's one thing I was thinking about. That's one thing I was thinking about doing, is taking my regular recorder and plus my phone, calling you and recording it, because I was going to send you the tape anyway.
Yeah.
I'll make a copy of it and let you, because everything I get yours.
I appreciate that, and
I'm
I
not
do.
giving no other channel anything, because I consider you, a friend and one of the best, and you're straight up, and I appreciate that.
I appreciate you and I appreciate you and Terry. Right. No,
I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate you and Terry and all the information that you guys have shared on the channel. Valuable information, especially, just stuff that when I had both of you on that night, and, it really kind of got me looking into the FBI case there. And, so I appreciate you guys. You guys are straight shooters. You're both honest and good folk, lack of a better word.
I appreciate that.
But,
well, we was always taught that, your words, you bond, and, if you lie, it's going to come back and bite you.
Yep.
And that's why I try to make sure that I get the truth before I tell it.
Right.
And so, and that, that's how I know you are, and I appreciate it. And the Dogman family out there, there's a lot of good people out there. All of them's good people.
Yeah,
and
definitely. My comment section is full of good people. I love them all.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
you're one of them.
They are. I appreciate it, and I just want everybody to know that I appreciate everything that they said on the last ones, and that I hope the good Lord blesses all of them, and that they all stay safe.
And there you have it, folks. I hope you all enjoyed tonight's second night ending bonus, I guess. I'd like to thank you guys all for supporting the channel. It is your support that helps the channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone's simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions. Never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.